Hi everyone, it's David from Doctors of Running, and today we're going to be doing a comparison video between the ASICS Superblast 2 and the ASICS Superblast. So this is a huge update from ASICS because the Superblast obviously was a very successful shoe that a lot of people liked. So I want to go over some of the similarities, some of the differences, what are the updates, is it worth the updates? And yeah, we'll start there. So I just want to go with some specifications first. The ASICS Superblast 1, 45.5 millimeters of stack in the heel, 37.5 millimeters of stack in the forefoot. That was an 8 millimeter drop. It was listed at 8.8 ounces or 250 grams. It used Flight Foam Turbo, which was seen in the Metaspeed Edge Plus and the Metaspeed Sky Plus. So they're racing models with Blast Plus on the underside there to just firm it up a tiny bit, but still give it a sense of structure and bounce. It had the high abrasion rubber and a single piece engineered mesh upper. When we look at the ASICS Superblast 2, similar in a lot of ways. We'll start off specifications though. 45 millimeters of stack in the heel, 37 millimeters of stack in the forefoot, 8 millimeter drop, 349 grams. So basically identical on a specification sheet. However, there are some differences in the actual shoe and in the midsole. So when we look at the materials, now it's using Flight Foam Turbo Plus, which is in the Metaspeed Edge and Sky Paris. That is a big update. I think the whole team at Doctors of Running felt like it was a big jump in materials from Flight Foam Turbo to Turbo Plus in the racing models. And I think it does show itself in the Superblast 2 as well. So it's supposed to be a little bit more lighter, a little bit more resilient, have more responsiveness, all that good stuff. I actually do think those carry over into the new foam. When we look at the rest of it, so single piece engineered mesh upper, they call it ASICS grip. They did change the outsole pattern to make it just a little bit more grippy and have a little bit more versatility on different footings. And the upper was changed a little bit. And I think it actually fits a little bit better, so I'm actually really happy with it. But going into the rides here, I think the midsole changes do show themselves. Now, Flight Foam Turbo and Turbo Plus have a little bit less compliancy than some of the other super foams out there, so they still kind of have a structured sense to them when you're running. So it doesn't feel mushy soft, but it certainly feels like a max cushion shoe, and that's resemblant in both of these models. But I will say the Turbo Plus does have just a tiny bit more give to it, and it does have more bounce off of it on the forefoot. The geometry of these shoes are very, very similar. I don't know if they made any last changes there, but it's a rounded heel, pretty long, flatter midfoot, and then a very gradual kind of toe spring going forward through the forefoot. It is a stiff shoe. There's no plate in there, but there's a lot of foam on this thing. So it's just kind of natural rigid by that point. So I will say from a responsiveness standpoint, I felt like the Superblast 2 felt like it could turn over a little bit better. I think that Turbo Plus really kicks in. I have done a 5-mile tempo run at marathon pace in this shoe. It felt good. It actually feels like a shoe that I might be able to race a marathon in comparison to some of the super shoes out there. It's a little bit heavier. I do feel the structure of the shoe a little bit more. But that was also the same thing with the Superblast 1. They both have a lot of sole flaring going on. We call it kind of a stable neutral type of shoe. At Doctors of Running. I think the mesh upper has a tiny bit more volume through the midfoot and into the forefoot, and it just kind of hugs the foot a little bit nicer. I think the upper in the Superblast 1 felt a tiny bit sloppy to me, kind of through the midfoot there, but otherwise the rest of the shoe was really good, so I was willing to look the other way. But I do feel like they cleaned up the fit quite a bit on the Superblast 2. It feels very streamlined, feels like it's on there, but it still feels like a premium trainer. The outsole traction, I think, is pretty noticeable. I mean, there's definitely some very small lugs there, so you can feel like you're actually gripping the ground a little bit better, and it's not just a road outsole. And I think when you pick up the pace, you feel like you can kind of claw the ground a little bit more. So I do feel like that is noticeable. The heel transitions are very, very similar. The bevel feels almost exactly the same. Like I said, there's a little bit more compliancy to the Turbo Plus versus the, Turbo Plus versus the regular Turbo. But the structure for the most part maintains itself. I did feel like with turning, it was pretty good. I didn't feel like I was unstable in any way. There's a slight stretch to the upper. Does break in a little bit, but I never had any issues with performing any turns or doing the workouts and stuff like that. So I've actually been really happy with the updates on the Superblast 2, and I was really happy with the Superblast original. So I do think they made some steps in the right direction, and I do actually feel like the Superblast 2 is an improvement upon the Superblast 1. A lot of similarities, but I think the improved streamlined fit, the slightly better traction, and the more responsive foam add some versatility to the Superblast 2 versus the Superblast. And I will say at easy paces, they both feel really good. I actually did kind of like having a slightly bit more compliancy to the foam in the Turbo Plus for the easier efforts as well compared to the Turbo. The Superblast did kind of feel a tiny bit clunky to me through the heel and midfoot on the original model. And some of that was still maintained a little bit on this newest model, but it was smoother and it actually feels really good once you get into rhythm and you're kind of out there longer. So they both work really well as long run shoes, but I do think I give a nod to the Superblast 2. I think the Superblast 2 actually can be a wonderful training companion and long run shoe as well. Daily trainer, kind of like that everything shoe you're looking for. So if I think you could totally justify getting either of these shoes, training in it, doing your long runs, doing your workouts, and maybe even racing the marathon, all in the same exact shoe. So I think ASICS hit it out the park again. But they're both great models, both similar. Just the big changes: traction, the upper fit has a tiny bit more volume through there, which feels good to me, and then the new midsole update. So some fun stuff coming from ASICS.